Hi, welcome to lecture 11 of Marketing Analytics. This lecture, we're going to focus on qualitative analytics, looking at how research helps to uncover consumer feelings, and we're also going to look into a little bit on sentiment analysis. Now, the learning objectives of this lecture, we are going to try and understand what are the definition, applications, and methods of qualitative analysis and the interpretation of qualitative research. And then we're going to look into the marketing analytics application of qualitative research by looking at text and sentiment analysis. So, what is qual research? Qual research is very different from quantitative research in that qual research helps us to review thinkings and feelings in a more in-depth and concise manner. This helps us to uncover attitudes and motivations influencing certain behaviors. And it provides us with much richer data than we can uncover using quantitative analysis. This qualitative research analyzes verbal and non-verbal communication, what are their actions, motivations, and as well as their reactions towards certain marketing campaigns or maybe towards certain events or product developments. So it is more focused on interpreting why people feel the way they do rather than what they do. The way that we comprehend not only what people say, but what they actually mean. So we're going to break it down to how qualitative analysis actually does. So the subject matters that we are looking into are the issues that relate to the conscious and the rational as well as the subjective and the emotional, which is very in-depth and quite often unable to be discovered through quantitative methods. The approach that qualitative takes is to unearth perceptions and motivations via directive interviewing or even certain flow of information by getting the consumers to reveal more about themselves. This helps us to draw inferences from observed patterns and themes using an adaptive, evolving, and unstructured, most of the time, iterative process. So you cannot say that qualitative research is something that is flowing from one end to the other end, but it has to be a continuous directive process that allows you to unearth more things the next time you search back through the same data set. The sample usually, because of this uh, large amount of work, the sample is usually small, purposeful, and very focused. The content that we're trying to capture here is through a variety of techniques, and the content is always rich, interwoven with verbal responses, plus non-verbal communication like body language, expression, actions, and reactions. There are three modes of qualitative research in general. First is your exploratory mode, where you explore ideas for products, advertising, and brand positioning, usage of attitudes and behaviors, knowledge and product benefits and attributes, brand differentiation related to brands, purchase decision-making process, and so on and so forth. Then you can also have the explanatory or the diagnostic, where we examine and investigate issues. For example, if you have a problem on the decline in a brand sales, you might want to look deeper into not merely in terms of the functional features of the brand, but also the emotive reasons why lapsed users stopped purchasing the brand. Could it be the brand has no more strong brand equity towards the consumers? What are the reasons that the person has stopped communicating or relating to the brand? Thirdly is evaluative, where we evaluate if a marketing proposition will satisfy its intended objectives, not in a very straightforward context, but more of a very qualitative and emotional response context. Now, qualitative research has many uses. The first is in its product development. If we use qualitative research to conduct concept development workshops. We are able then to explore, develop, and improve concepts via an iterative process where consumers can assess a number of concepts in detail, as with lecture 4 when we saw in the new product development when we're testing for marketing concepts. And then if we can prioritize those deserving for further development, which will help us to save costs on concepts that do not work. We can also use this during marketing mix workshops by optimizing the elements of the marketing mix, including product naming, usage, advertising, brand positioning, and packaging. What are some of the product names that will resonate with your consumers, and what are some of the product packaging that will allow your consumers to feel more appealed to buying the product in the future? You can also look into creative development. Now, understanding the brands better in terms of its positioning. What are some of the things that allows the consumers to really resonate with the brand in terms of their image and personality? Chalk out new directions in advertising or also in new product development. For example, they found out that in China, people like the new flavor of chili Mars Snickers bar, chocolate bars. So can you imagine of chili Snickers appeals to people, but this product, because it was tested and because they found out that this is what people wanted, it actually, this new product development sold very, very well. It also helps us to refine AdSets or advertising concepts and verify the execution details on how the advertisement should be done by screening the new advertising, product and positioning concepts, and also for copy testing purposes to see if people understood what the advertisement is actually displaying in terms of its clear message to the consumers and its intended objectives from the companies. You can also look into packaging development by using qualitative development. Now, of course, this way we can explore whether the new package designs has a good appeal in terms of communication and how effectively the packaging communicates the brand for what it stands for in terms of its proposition, personality, and its key symbols, identifiers, and icon. Go and check out Energizer, the way that they have changed their packaging because people have said that they like the new packaging and therefore they have gone through several test copies and also test marketing to see which packaging resonates with people. Now, qualitative has an iterative process and it involves a high involvement of client and researcher at every single stage. So it always starts with a research brief to find out what the client wants, and therefore the proposal will come out to say who are the people that they would like to involve in the research, what are some of the ethical issues, because we do not want to have a problem whereby if we ask or say something wrong, it will induce feelings that are non-conducive to the researcher and also to the client especially. What are some of the issues that we have to look into in terms of the environment or the language or the kind of questions that we're going to ask, especially during a qualitative in-depth interview? And also, we would like to have a discussion guide design with the methodologies. Example, like a interview schedule. What are the questions that we're going to ask? How is the flow? What is the duration? And what do we hope to get out of it? We also would like to see an engagement in terms of the fieldwork execution, for example, the techniques that we're going to use, as well as the body language. How are we going to analyze the data, as well as the presentation of the data? So let's delve deeper into the methodologies. In qualitative, there are several methodologies that people can use. For example, focus groups in terms of mini groups to find out more in-depth issues. But this is very hard to recruit because if we're looking for very specialized concepts, then we will need to have very specialized consumer panel data or very specialized people to actually be part of this mini focus group. We can also look at extended group to look at complex and in-depth subjects, especially with subjects that are relatable to one another. We also would like to see whether we can use conflict groups to see if we can force out deep-seated feelings. For example, the use of technology between the younger generation and the older generation. Now, if we do not want to have a group-focused interview, we can also develop on a depth interview. For example, looking at individual interviews one-on-one. This is where we can delve deeper into sensitive issues where the consumers or the respondents would not generally like to tell other people about the issues that they're facing. What about joint decisions? Maybe husband and wife, to see the differences in the way that they give their answers. And we can also look at triads, usually individuals who know one or two or the other in terms of explaining in a very, very small group about what they feel towards a certain brand or a certain product. Now, certain techniques can come out in qualitative research. These techniques are not exhaustive, but they are quite comprehensive. We can start out with rational and emotional response, fact versus feeling. So for example, why do you buy something, but go deeper to find out exactly why do they buy a certain car. For example, if I were to buy a car because I want to buy the car for its functionality. But in essence, if you were to really go deeper, people buy cars because of the way that the car makes them feel. Young or maybe stylish, or there is a certain je ne sais quoi quality towards buying the car. Then you can also have projective techniques like alternative expressions of responses. You can ask people to imagine a certain thing, and you can ask people hypothetical questions as well, so that they can project their ideas if this hypothetical situation was true. You can also ask third-party questioning. Why do some older men buy racy motorcycle? Rather than asking them directly, why do you buy the motorcycle? You can ask in general terms from a third-party point of view so that they don't feel threatened that the question is directed at them. You can also use word association, asking them to tell you the first thing that comes to mind when you say the word Dove, or a brand, or any certain other product features. You can ask them to complete a sentence, whereby you can ask them, the thought of having me having a baby makes me feel. Personification. If let's say you can get them to think about personifying a certain brand or a certain name or a certain product. Example, if Citibank were an animal, what animal would it be? This will help you to see how the consumers value or see the brand in a different context in a very interesting way. You can also look at asking them which of these brands do you think considered as modern. Asking them anchoring a particular attribute to see what top of mind comes out when they feel a certain attribute. You can ask them if they're not comfortable to talk, to draw pictures instead. For example, if it's a concept that's very difficult to draw, like insurance, get them to draw something out. Now, in this way, you can get ideas on what people picture for an idea or concept that you can also use in an advertisement that can appeal to these people. You can also ask them to do role playing. What if they were a CEO? What would they do to improve the customer satisfaction? Get them to play around with a role play and put them in a situation of a hypothetical manner so that they can give you a better answer from their point of view. You can also use the laddering techniques where it begins with a simple question and then repeatedly asking them for subsequent answer, like asking them, why is this important? Why is that important? That is interesting. Can you elaborate more on that? Also, you can use a bubble speech technique. For example, like the picture on the right here, you notice that a little girl says, Mom, I failed a maths test. What would the mom say in its turn? Now, You need to be a very good interviewer or a good moderator if you're going to be doing qualitative researcher and doing data collection. So a good personality or a good moderator would know how to engage and also handle different types of personality when it comes to moderation or interviewing. If you have a person who's very dominant in terms of his personality, then as a moderator, you should actively encourage and elicit the opinions of others. What if you have passive participants, participants who just don't like to talk? Use encouragement and support by making eye contact, calling them their names directly, and asking them the questions directed at them personally. But of course, making sure that they are comfortable in answering the question. You have to set the comfortable scene. What about people who are superfluous in their storytelling, that they talk on and on and on but never get right to the point? As a good moderator, you should be able to steer the discussion back on course and go back to the main context of discussion. What if people that are silent? Address the cause. Could it be that they are uncomfortable to say something? Could it be that they are unsure or they need time to think about the answer before explaining? And if you need to, you might also have to repeat the question and make the question a little bit more clear. Now, if in a group there are personal attacks, as a good moderator, you must remind all participants to be respectful and not personally direct the feelings to another person. Now, if there is fatigue in the group discussion or the discussion is becoming a little bit too boring or the energy is going low, try to induce a break in between or an activity to get them feeling rejuvenated again before they move on to the next level of the interview. Also, as a good moderator, you need to take note of certain non-verbal communication or body language. Certain eye contacts, certain roll of the eye, certain scratches of the head, certain gestures on the chin. These reveal complementary and disassociation of verbal communication. Sometimes verbal communication can appear to be more honest than actually what is said. Try and figure out about the tone of their body and also in essence does that match with what they are saying. You might also want to look into the tone and the volume of how they say things. And all this non-verbal communication gives you more impact on what is not being said rather than what is being said. Now, if we move on to analysis and interpretation, we can see that qualitative analysis can go in different ways. For example, we can describe providing actual factual information on the discussion and the participants' reactions and attitudes, behaviors and responses and needs. What about going into deeper interpretation of the qualitative research, interpreting verbal and non-verbal tone, intensity, silent movements, the contradictions, as well as the influence of what was said earlier. In fact, of what they said before may be in contradiction of what they are saying now. You might also want to analyze intrinsically subjective matters based on individual viewpoints. The process and the story will tend to vary. Always try to steer the discussion to get them to tell you um, and to solicit a confirmation of what they have mentioned. Use words like, this is what you've said. Can I confirm that this is what you said? Or is it true that this is what you said and this is how you feel? Get them to give you a definite yes or no, which will help you to get a much more concrete answer. Now, there are several ways that you can do content analysis using social listening. Now, in the last video, we looked at what social listening is. Social listening basically gathers content from forums, comment sections, and social media and converts this HTML to readable text by human, but it is not interpreted, which means that it is very raw data. Now, if you can collect all these social listening comments, then you can move into content analysis, which allows you to find out the sentiments and the text analysis to create themes, to find out what people generally say, and also what are the emerging issues that appear out from all these comments or contexts. This content analysis serves as a good segmentation and targeting activity as well as opinions about brands. Content analysis can be done in several ways. You can use the acquired data in a lot of meaningful ways and study the digital text, photos or audios, or even the visual formats of the communication to further understand the customers. You can use data scraping, web crawlers, and sentiment analysis to collect your data. One of the ways is using a word cloud, as you see here, to see what is the word that appears the most in terms of its intensity and in terms of its volume. Now, big data word cloud. Word cloud allows you to transform the comments into words, and it shows you the occurrence of the most important word and what is important to the rest of the group and also as the individual alone. Data scraping is basically using software to scrape information from websites and then tokenizing it into several different types of data documents. This is a computer-generated program of extraction of information from individuals' computer screens, websites, or reports. Now, this is legal and legitimate use of data scraping focuses primarily on scraping data that is available freely in the public spaces. Web crawlers is a web scraping technique that used by firms to index the web periodically to make searching quicker. Now, a web crawler searches public databases to see if there are any emerging patterns that come out from the information that is provided by the public spaces of the companies. So after the extraction by the web crawler, the data is then stored to calculate certain metrics, highest occurrence, or whether or not there is a certain sequence or pattern that emerges from these web crawlers. It is also possible to gain even greater control over the web scraping through programming languages like R or Python. Now, these are some of the examples of very good data scraping and content analysis tools: Screaming Frog, PassHub, Octopass, Word Clouds, and Import.io. Do spend some time in researching what each of these different softwares can do and what are the differences and advantages and also the disadvantages. In text analysis, it is very important for us to break down the sentences into what we call as tokens. Now, the process of tokenization takes the following hypothetical document or a following simple sentence and breaks them down into words that can be used to be analyzed in terms of its volume or in terms of its intensity. So for example, if you have a hypothetical document or a sentence that says, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. So taking this word, tokenizing to what you see bottom below, you see the frequencies of the word duck happening 4 times, and also the frequency of happening 4 times. This helps you to decompose the sentence into distinct pieces or tokens, as we call it, so that you can see what are the tokens or words that appear the most. Applying tokenization is important before we do any sentiment analysis or text analysis. In the text analytics process, we always try to find the ways to organize your data in a successful manner or in a manner that is understood by the researcher. So you can start by breaking down the sentence into words and tokenize. Then you can also see whether or not there are lower cases, because lower cases and upper cases in tokenization appear as different words. But if you were to say that you lowercase all the words, then the words will appear the same. You want to try to also remove symbols, numbers, and punctuations, which are not really not really communicative of anything important to the word. Now, you might also want to get rid of stop words, like example, the, a, and, or even conjunction words like but, with, and so on and so forth, so that only the most important primary words appear. Then try to stem the words by converting similar words of the same type to have the same meaning. For example, if you were to stem the word run, into runs and running, and you stem them all together to say run, they actually say the same thing, but just in different formats. Now, the technical video on text analysis will give you more in depth on what this means. Please have some time to look at that video. Then we move on to the best part of text analysis or qualitative analysis, which is using the natural language processing to do sentiment analysis. Natural language processing, or NLP, is an artificial intelligence interaction between computers and humans using the natural language. This helps us to read, decipher, and understand and make sense of the human languages in a manner that is valuable and occasionally acceptable and also meaningful to both humans and to the humans and the researcher. So sentiment analysis is a data-driven approach to identify the tone, the context, and feelings in the customer's language towards your offering or towards your brand or even towards whatever posting that you put out there. Now, what is the usage of sentiment analysis in marketing analytics? First, we need to find what is the sentiment base. Are these people willing to recommend the product or the service? Asking your customers via surveys or polls and direct the feedback and communication with the customer service using social media monitoring, or also getting them to give you a feedback through a survey. Then from there, once you've gathered the information, you can gain insights by knowing what your customers say about your product, whether it is good or bad or neutral, knowing what the customers like or dislike about your product, but also taking note that the sentiments can change over time because of product and campaign changes as well. So they may like Apple today, but if you come out with a very bad product for Apple, they might change their sentiment. So always periodically check on the sentiment of your customers. Then, once you know how your customers feel in terms of their sentiments, this is where you can now go into doing a call to action. This is where you use the promoters as the megaphones for the call to actions in the sentiments, and then you can adjust your products and make your customers know about what is the adjustments of your products and respond to the comments and the complaints especially, so that your objective of your products or service is go back in line with what the customers expect and feel that they are getting worth. So how do we do sentiment analysis assessment? Number one, the challenge is monitoring thousands of comments on social media. The comments are quite subjective in terms of its assessment of the sentiments. It can be staff intensive and also error prone if we do not use the right kind of analytics tools or even the right kind of methodology. The solution is using an automated social media data monitoring and using a reliable assessment of sentiments and also a targeted call to action to the negative comments, but not only the negative, but also the neutral and also the positive comments. And the impact of using sentiment analysis assessment is that we can increase customer acquisition by getting people what they want and also retaining the people who are positive by acknowledging their comments are beneficial to us. We can also increase customer satisfaction by mitigating the negative comments and also gaining more support for your brand by looking at the neutral side of people and also putting in attitudes or even sentiments that will attract and appeal the customers to your brand. Some of the major sentiment analysis tools are available out there, but on a paid basis, and that are people using are the sentiment analysis meaning clouds, the monkey learn, as well as the alien. These are some of the meaning clouds or some of the plugins that they use in RapidMiner and also sentiment analysis. I would like you to take some time to take on the notes to look at some of the sentiment analysis notes as well as presenting your analysis on sentiment analysis. Now, you can also use a free word count generator, and there are several word count generators online. Again, the technical video will show you some of these and how you can do it. The ones that are free in the technical video that I will show is the VADR, or we call it the variance analysis. I forgot the term. Just check out the technical video and you will see what I mean. Now, for your tutorial, this is what I want you to do for this tutorial for this lecture. Go through the text and sentiment analysis videos using a web crawler or any other tool to search online for product reviews and comments, and follow the video to do your own text analysis and produce a meaningful word cloud. Now, you can either use a web crawler, or if you have access to a database of comments, do that. Try not to put too many comments. Maybe keep it to just say about 100 to 300 will do. Then, from the technical video of text analysis from multiple documents, do text analysis and also a word cloud from RapidMiner. Next, download the RapidMiner Toolbox 2.6 into your RapidMiner software and practice and follow the steps in the video outlined in the sentiment analysis with RapidMiner. Try to do two types of sentiment analysis, one from the comments and one from Twitter account. Try to do another sentiment analysis on famous brands using appropriate and trending hashtags by analyzing the recent 500 tweets or a comment extracted from a brand or social media page. Limit to just 500 comments. Once you've done that, present your results to the whole class and try to extract some very interesting and also how does that translate into marketing strategy for the brand. As an additional, I would like to encourage you to read this article called The Sentiment Analysis, Usage of Text and Emoji for Expressing Sentiments, Advances in Data and Information Science lecture, Notes on Network and Systems. From this reading, try to identify how integrating the technologies that you've learned from the previous lecture of Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, automated voice recognition, and virtual and augmented reality to transform, and how these technologies will transform the current state of sentiment analysis for marketing industries in the future. For example, how would internet technology or artificial intelligence change the way we see the way sentiment analysis is going to be viewed in the future? If, for example, if you were to use artificial intelligence or automated voice recognition, will it change the way we look at robotics or even the way that we see Alexa, Cortana, or even the Google speech? Now, finally, there is a very simple coordination for your final exam. In this current state, your final exam will be an online exam, and it is an open book exam that is 2 hours and 15 minutes. You will be asked questions based on your article, readings, labs and tutorials and activities, and you will have to answer 2 questions. But remember, you are not allowed to copy and paste information from the internet, because your exam paper will be put through the Turnitin on the online e-learn. Now, that ends the lecture for this particular subject. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the near future.